Hey guys, I'm back in with another video, and today I'm going to be showing you guys some of my favorite books from 2022, kind of like a reading wrap-up of the year. And I'm doing this because I read way too many books this year, so I couldn't even probably fit all of them in one video. I think I totaled it up and it was 80 physical books and 10 books on Kindle Unlimited for like a total of 90 books, so definitely read a lot this year. Read a lot of good books, had some not so favorite books, but I'm going to be focusing on the good books that I read this year, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with you guys. So my first 5-star read of 2022 is The Last She by H.J. Nelson, and this is a book that originated on Wattpad and blew up from there and got published. And this is a story set in post-apocalyptic America, and it's about this infection, this like virus that got released and killed off a large part of the population, and for the most part it killed off majority of the people who got killed off were females, and the surviving males in this kind of like universe, they form these communities and these different like bands of people. And then Ara comes along. She thinks she's like the last female on Earth, and so does the group of guys who find her. They think she is the last female. And for them, this is just like a crazy thing, because they haven't seen like another female in years. And this is about the story of like her trying to figure out why she's like the only female. And they're kind of just trying to figure out what went wrong and how they can fix this. So my next 5-star read is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. And this is the second book in the Crescent City series. And this cover is just gorgeous, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it, and it just makes reading the story even better. So it's basically a continuation of the first book. It has Bryce and Hunt. It's like a continuation of their romance, and of course like a bunch of stuff is added into the mix to complicate everything, like an arranged marriage, spies, like it just is insane, and it expands the world a lot more. You get to learn about Hunt's kind of like backstory a little more and why he is the way he is. And you get to learn about the people from his past. And also it had that major kind of like surprise ending, which I'm not going to go into because I don't want to spoil it, but this is definitely worth reading, and I recommend it, highly recommend it, because this was probably my favorite book I read all year. I am obsessed with Sarah J. Maas, and I think I can't wait for this third book to come out, and it's taking forever, and I don't think I can wait any longer. So my next 5-star read is Through My Window by Ariana Godoy, and I kind of spilled coffee all over my cover of it. And this is the book that originated on Wattpad and got turned into a movie on Netflix, and it was kind of like done with, I think, Netflix in Spain, which I think was such a great idea because they did so well in that movie. And it's about this girl who's had a crush on her next door neighbor like forever, and she's kind of like lower like middle class, and he's like super rich. Like his family owns this big corporation. His name is Aries and her name is Raquel, and his family, they named the 3 of their boys after Greek gods, so she calls him Aries, Greek god, and she basically kind of stalks him, but like you find out later that's kind of like a mutual thing. They're both obsessed with each other, and it's a big will he won't be. He's kind of awful to her in the beginning, but throughout the story he like basically grows as a person and becomes better for her, and it's a lot about helping each other find themselves, which I think was a really good plot point for this book. Overall, I loved this book, and I'm so excited for the next movie in the series and for the next book in the series that comes out next year. So this wouldn't be a reading wrap-up video for 2022 without including Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and this book got me back into reading again, because I went through a really bad reading slump at the beginning of the year, and this jump-started my like reading journey, and it just took off from there. And this story is about Nora Stevens and Charlie Lastra. They both work at a publishing company. It's enemies to lovers, and it's also a small-town romance because her and her sister decide to take a trip down to this town is where like her client's book like takes place, and it turns out to be the hometown of Charlie. So they're kind of there, they're working together, and obviously, like, there's a ton of, like, chemistry, because they have a lot in common, because they're both so into books, and this was just such a great read. I love everything Emily Henry writes, I think, and I'm so excited for her next book, and I hope it's as good as this one. So next I have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I read this at the beach, and it was the perfect beach read, if I'm being honest, because it takes place in Malibu, and it details like everything about the Rivas family, which if you've read any of Taylor Jenkins Reid, you probably recognize that last name, and you hate a certain person, like just like I do. But in this book, it's going about like Nina Rivas is kind of like narrating the whole story, and it starts from the very beginning when her parents meet, and it's like the beginning of their relationship and like how it basically ultimately falls apart and how like the children deal with it. And it's basically about finding yourself and just not letting other people define you, and just kind of like you aren't your parents. And I think it's just a really good book, and I think it was the perfect book to get me into Taylor Jenkins Reid. Then there is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, and this is a friends to lovers as well as a second chance romance, and it goes back and forth between when they were kids and how they first like fell in love, and then it goes into the present, and it's dealing with his mom dies and she comes back into the town and they rekindle their romance, but there's also some secrets that she has that could ultimately like, you know, destroy everything they're like building up again. And I just think this was such a good book. This was her first book that she wrote, and it was really good, and I'm just really excited for more books from her because this was just definitely a good book to start off with. So next I have Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, and this is her second book that she's written, and it came out this year, and it's an enemies to lovers as well as a workplace rivals romance, and I absolutely adored this book. It's about Bee and Levi. They're these really smart scientists, and they're brought down into Texas to work on a project for NASA. And at first it's really hard working together because they initially think they hate each other, but you find out like he fell for her first. He's obsessed with her, and they both have there's these like Twitter accounts. She runs one of them, and she's trying to figure out who runs this other account that she like talks to. And I just think it's a really cute romance, and if you're into the whole science thing, this is definitely a good one to pick up, because Ali Hazelwood just really knows how to combine the nerdy science stuff and the romance, and it just works so well. And this was definitely a 5-star read that I read this year. Then I have Lightlark by Alex Astor, and this book is so controversial because you either loved it or you hated it. I swear there was like no in between. Like everyone on TikTok was so divided, and obviously now I'm probably gonna read it again soon because she just got this huge movie deal. And this is a kind of like a fantasy book, and it like takes place in this like universe where there's these different worlds, and they all come together on this island every like 100 years or something for this competition, and it's a competition that we need to like win in order to save their universe. And it also has a love triangle in it, and I think the reason people were so divided on this, because yes, it is kind of a slow book and the action comes super fast at the end, but I kind of liked how she spent a lot of time explaining things and building up this world, because I think further on in the series it's going to help a lot. And so I definitely love this book. It was a 5-star read for me, and that's where I stand on the whole thing. Next I have From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata, and this is an enemies to lovers sports romance, and it's about 2 figure skaters. It's about a girl. She starts out originally being like a single skater, but she's not winning, and she's like kind of starting to burn out, and then she's brought in to be the partner of her enemy. And I think I liked this book so much because it reminded me of a series on Netflix that got canceled, and that series was Spinning Out, and it was about like 2 ice skaters. And I love this book so much, and it's also another like he fell first, which I love those when the guy falls for her first. Also, enemies to lovers is like one of my favorite tropes, and like definitely the ice skating aspect was really interesting, and their romance was just really cute. And I will admit it is a slow burn, but it's definitely worth it. Next I have Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, and this is a enemies to lovers romance that takes place in fantasy world. And I know this kind of takes place in the same universe as a series that she wrote before this that I haven't read, but I think even without reading it, I really enjoyed like getting to learn the world from this book, and the characters were very interesting. It's about this kind of like king of one land, and it's she's like an army guard for like the main like kingdom, and they don't get along at first because she's trying to like find somebody, and he's like a main suspect and like some sort of like crime she's like kind of investigating in a way, and they end up getting like kidnapped, and they're forced to like help each other to get back to where they need to be. and it's just a really good book, and I'm excited to read the sequel to it. So next I have Layla by Colleen Hoover, and this is not the typical Colleen Hoover book. It's not a romance book. It's actually a paranormal thriller, and it's about this guy who meets this girl at a wedding and they fall in love immediately, and they basically they move super fast and they move in with each other, and then they end up, something happens and they end up going back to the place they met, and he has this ghost that's messing with him, and he's trying to figure out who his ghost is and what the connection to him is. And I think it was really interesting. I will admit, I read this and I was a little tired of the typical Colleen Hoover romance, and I wanted something different, and this definitely was different, and I think this was a very good book. It's actually one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books now, because I like it better than It Ends With Us, if I'm being honest, which, I feel like people are gonna hate me for saying that, but I really liked this book. So my last book is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, and this is about a girl who comes to this town because she ends up leaving her fiance at the altar, and her twin sister has some emergency, and she's coming down to meet her twin sister. But then you find out her twin sister is leaving her kid, and she ends up becoming responsible of her sister's kid, and people keep thinking she is her twin, and her twin is not liked at all in this town, and it's set in this town called Knockemout. And then you meet Knox, and he's this grumpy man who's thinks he's kind of had the worst of life, and it's definitely grumpy sunshine romance, which I'm also a big fan of. I really like any kind of book, if I'm being honest. This definitely hit the mark, and I think it was so good, and I'm excited to see the story continue with Knox's brother. So there you have it. Those are my favorite books that I read in 2022. Honestly, it was so hard to narrow it down to the ones I absolutely loved and were my 5-star reads, because I think there were only a few books that I rated less than 3.5 stars, so it was really hard to pick which ones were my absolute favorites. So I hope you enjoyed this book. I hope it gives you some good recommendations, and without further ado, I'll see you guys in my next video.